Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Tuesday, June 4th. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully everyone had a great weekend. And let's get started into some Grand Solar Minimum news. First, we'll start over here at thegrandsolarminimum.com. Check out where Mari has taken the time to lay out all the articles for you guys tonight in links, and there's our buddy right there. Let's take a look at our solar wind speed, sitting at 344.2 kilometers per second with a density of 5.8. We have 0 sunspots. That's 16 days in a row now without a sunspot, giving us 90 for 2019. That's 58% of the year so far without a sunspot. And we'll go to the space weather section here at the grandsolarminimum.com. Let's take a look at our planetary alignment right now. Kind of see where everybody is. And proton flux, low, KP indices in the 2s. Nothing really to speak of. Let's go take a look at the SDO in motion. We thought, well, we might have had some bright regions turn into some sunspot activity. That has not happened. Those are not sunspots. I believe it would be something along the lines of Phallica. So just some bright areas on the sun. And with that being said, guys, we are definitely in solar minimum like conditions. These two areas that we're looking at here are not considered sunspots. And therefore, right now, as it stands, we don't have any activity that appears to be coming around the eastern limb of our sun. Although we will keep an eye on this, but guys, this is typical solar minimum stuff right here. We are looking at low solar wind speeds, almost inactive on the coronal hole side. We haven't had any kind of eruption or a class flare at all in the last 16 days. So again, typical solar minimum activity right now in the sun. And here's our TSI. We do have some missing data. But right now, 1360.70. Now, I want to mention something here. I'm not going to get into who. I'm sure those of you who follow us, there are channels out there who criticize what we are teaching here at the Grand Solar Minimum channel. And one thing I want to point out real quick is the TSI and the trend and where it's been since 2014. Obviously, solar max, and we started coming down out of that. We got our peak right around here in our atmospheric temperatures. But notice the steady decline of TSI. And you could really see this by looking at the space between the TSI readings and this top line that represents the top of the graph. And as you can see, guys, we have done nothing but decline since 2014. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that I actually heard a channel that rivals us agreeing that the trend of TSI is going down and continues that way. And not only that, but he also throws in the comment that TSI helps cool the planet. Are we seeing a possibility of changing of heart when it comes to science? And finally, people are understanding where we're coming from when it comes to this topic. I don't know, but I was shocked to see it. It was a channel that was you could say a rival, I guess, but they've disagreed with us many times and finally admitting some truth and informing his public that TSI is dropping, and that is also contributing to cooling. So just interesting stuff there. All right, let's get right with it here, guys. Strong eruptions at Mexico's Popocatépetl, volcano ash plume, 37,000 feet. Strong eruptions took place at Mexico's Popocatépetl volcano at 1447 UTC on June 3rd, 2019, producing an ash column up to 37,000 feet above sea level. The alert remains at yellow, phase 2, middle on a 3-color scale. And here is tons of footage here. This is actually footage here with the Watchers logo on it. Here we have the ash plume. There's the second eruption, and that's where we see ash. Now, this is a great shot. I'll go ahead and replay this. Just gives you an idea of, this is not an amazing volcano eruption here. 37,000 feet is quite, it's big, but Nothing to the point where it's going to affect climate all over the world. But what I find fascinating here is just in this little bit of plume here, you can see where this sun is being blocked out by all of the ash plume that's coming from this particular location. So imagine all of these major volcanoes going off, and we're going to talk about a couple more, but tonight I wanted to throw a couple volcano stories in just because we have seen a few here recently, and I'll just scroll down and skip ahead a little bit. Eruption at Mount Merapi, estimated volume lava dome is 458,000 cubic meters in Indonesia. Now this eruption was only about 12,000, close to 13,000 at some point. This also went off on June 3rd, 2019. By June 1st, the volcano had emitted 72 ash columns from its crater since it entered a new effusive eruption phase on January 29th, 2019. Residents are warned to remain outside the 1.6 miles exclusion zone. Now, so we've got Merapi firing up. We've got Popocatépetl, Papa Cap in your ass.
What?
But this other I'm just saying.
Fired.
I'm sorry. So we've had some strong eruptions lately. Agung, Cinnabung, and now Popocatépetl volcano here in Mexico. Do not need the peanut gallery's comment. So,
sorry.
So just do your job and I'll do mine.
Just pushing it to be the best you can be, Jake.
Just do your job and I'll do mine. That's where we're going to go with that. I'm just kidding, folks. All right, so back to the news at hand. 6.1 earthquake. Again, reporting on this because it is space weather related. A deep earthquake registered by the JMA. 6.1 hit the Izu Islands region, Japan at 4:39 UTC on June 4th. The agency reporting a depth of 273 miles. The earthquake can have low humanitarian impact based on the magnitude and affected population and their vulnerability. This is just a basic write-up of the area of where this earthquake. We have no tsunami reports or anything like that. Before we go any further, I want to say a quick hello to some of you out there. Grant, it's been a long time. Good to see you out there. Pete, Matt Bros. Matt is keeping very close contact with me relating to the farm conditions out there in Nebraska. And I saw you in here kind of tearing through some things. Thor, good to see you tonight as well. I'm not in the chat a lot, so I do see some of you that are frequent visitors. I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch more. Mari is one that keeps better tabs on the chat, but I wanted to say hello real quick while we were doing this live feed. So, all right, got that out of the way. And let's continue to move on as we have more grand solar minimum news to report on. So, and I'll kind of touch base with this here in a little bit too, but let's talk about some weather in Queensland, Australia. Severe weather, including rare snowfall, reported in Queensland. A deepening Tasman low combined with a strong high in Great Australian Bight, bringing windy and cold conditions to New South Wales and Queensland, Australia, June 3rd, once again, 2019. A rare occurrence of snow was reported near the New South Wales and Queensland border at Yuki, just south of Stanthorpe. Severe weather warnings were issued at about 620-mile stretch of the coast, including Sydney, New South Wales, and people urged to stay indoors amid heavy rain and gale-force winds. Near freezing temperatures and snowfall were reported in Yuki, just south of Stanthorpe. This is near New South Wales and Queensland border, about 136 miles southwest of Brisbane. And of course, the media, social media, Twitter, everyone talking about this. This is rare. While snow is rare in Queensland, it does happen from time to time, mostly near the border. The last significant snowfall was back in 2015. Snowfall in Queensland, driven by colder air from the south, was an unusual occurrence in a state with subtropical to tropical climate. But in the south of the state, particularly near the New South Wales border, it's quite mountainous, and in the elevated areas, it can get quite cold. BOM reported a very cold morning across the Darling Downs and Granite Belt of Queensland, with a few new May records set on the 31st. Stanthorpe registered at 19.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Applethorpe registered at 21 degrees Fahrenheit. Oakley came in at 24 degrees. Dalby at 25.5. Warwick at 23.1 degrees. These are all Fahrenheit. Close to its 22.4 record set in 1965. Now, this area was just described as a subtropical to tropical climate. And we're seeing, in my opinion, 19 degrees is pretty freaking cold for these folks here. And yes, it does happen. It does happen from time to time. But just another talking note here for what we have in store tonight. Because I've got some things to talk about here later that are very ironic, that deal with a guy, let's just say we all know and love him very well. We'll get to that here very, very, very soon. All right, let's move right along. Lake Ontario sets new water level here, guys. Lake Ontario daily average water level rose to a record high of 248.98 feet above sea level on May 31st, 2019, breaking the previous record not only by a little bit, 248.95 feet, but the level is expected to rise in coming weeks. The record high water has inundated some low-lying properties, even in calm water, but the worst flooding occurs when winds generate larger waves over top and destroy shoreline, protective structures, and flooding adjoining property. The current water level is about 32.28 inches above average for this time of year. That's quite substantial. Toronto officials announced last week that the lake had hit the 249.44 feet above sea level, the highest point of its recorded history. The lake hit unprecedented highs in the spring and the summers of 2017, and that's ironic to mention as well. That's when we started seeing the increasing amounts of cosmic rays entering our atmosphere. That's when we started to see the uptick in this kind of situation. But back then in 2017, we weren't talking about it on a widespread level like we are right now. It was a very few occurrences of the areas of the world that were experiencing this. Yet did we know that that was the tip of the iceberg. But it says, reading on here, official damage total was not calculated, but it was estimated to cost more than $200 million or more in 2017. Waves and winds are wreaking havoc again this spring. The worst event so far occurred on May 28th when northeast winds generated waves of 2 to 3 feet. A flood outlook issued by the Hamilton Conservation Authority on June 1st points to record inflows from Lake Erie and ongoing flooding in the St. Lawrence River as two factors behind the high water levels, CBS News said. In on itself, the peak lake levels are not expected to cause significant shoreline flooding hazards, although continued localized flooding of the areas previously mentioned is expected. So, again, just another part of the world that we're experiencing flooding, lakes, rivers, creeks, you name it. Right now, Mother Nature is not being prejudiced on anywhere. Canada, United States, Mexico, Chile, Japan, China, Indonesia, India, Africa, Italy, France, Greece, Australia. I mean, these are all areas that have had headline news of their climate, the situation of it. That's quite a bit of area to cover there, folks. But, you know, just remember, it's all global warming, like old Al said. Historically delayed planting season, commodity prices rising in the U.S. Yeah, well, this article came out on June 1st. Catastrophic floods affecting the United States since March 2019 are resulting in what experts are calling historically delayed planting season. The situation is already having a big impact on commodity prices, but the full extent will be known by the end of the year into 2020 planting season. This article gives a good wrap up. From January to early March, average temperatures in the Midwest remain 20 to 30 degrees. That's within range, with record snowfall in many areas, including an early March blizzard, which dumped around 3 feet in some areas. Temperatures rose to about 60 degrees from March 11th to the 13th, and combined with the 1.5 inches of rain to quickly melt the snow, caused unprecedented runoff into local streams and rivers. That's how this all got started. Many of the rivers were still frozen with a thick layer of ice, which the powerful flow of water broke up and dislodged, creating massive chunks of ice that traveled downstream, acting like a plow. Those are being called, what we have is called ice jams. And we saw those firsthand.
This now from Arkansas. So, Manny, let's talk.
So I'm not going to play the audio of this, but I will play this video here for a minute, just to guys kind of give you guys an idea of the mainstream picking up on their coverage. CBS News here reporting on the floods down south. The Weather Channel all day today, and I had quite some time today to look at a few reports, but all day, every time I tune in, they were talking about the floods. Sunday, while watching a couple of TV programs with Mari, we saw anywhere from 4 to 5 different kinds of flood insurance or flood-related commercials. It's becoming relevant now that the mainstream media is starting to talk about what's happening across the country. Now, of course, they're not blaming natural cycles or anything like that. It's all still our fault. And I have a feeling that this is part of the fear tactic of why they are trying to push the Green New Deal. And that, to me, seems like the motivation why mainstream media is showing us these pictures. Because, again, I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I feel like they're showing us these pictures because we see all these Democrats in office trying to push these new climate deals. And if the public is not paying attention to this on a daily basis, like most of you are, they're going to see these images coming from networks like CBS and Weather Channel and others who push man-made global warming. And they're going to think this is all linked together. But I have to give the mainstream media a little credit. At least they're talking about it now. But the problem with this is that they're talking about it now. And this has been going on for quite some time. Some areas have been flooding like this since January. Today, the $19 billion disaster bill that was passed through Congress is now awaiting action from the Senate to pass it along to the president to sign, which I'm sure he will at this point. But if I'm not mistaken, there was about an $18.1 billion relief bill that was still on the books waiting to be released for 2018's disaster bill. I mean, I hope that one has been taken care of and that this is a new $19 billion bill. But I have a bad feeling, and somebody in the chat, maybe you can help me with this because I didn't have a lot of time to look into this. The Weather Channel was trying to talk politics, basically, about this bill. Let me ask the chat right now. Can you guys tell me out there, this $19.1 billion bill that was passed today by Congress, is this current for 2019, or is this still from last year's bill and we're not even done with 2019 as far as how much we need to help with the recovery right now? I will say this, relief is needed immediately for farmers across the country right now for this year as well. If they haven't received anything for 2018, 2019 has been, in my opinion, a worse situation with the crops than we probably have ever seen since we started this channel. So nonetheless, $19 billion, and to me, if that is for this year, keep that in mind, folks. This is only a running tally from March until June 1st. This isn't counting what we still have to go through right now, which, you know, hurricane seasons officially started on June 1st. We're watching Invest 91 right now as we're speaking. And Mari and I both do a little bit of research from time to time. Mari does a lot of it. And Mari reminded me, like I have read once as well, but she freshly was looking at something where hurricanes, and I just went over this too a couple weeks ago, but the hurricane season is not expected to be as active, say, as we are looking at the tornado season so far. And there's a little bit difference as far as how those systems are formed, obviously. But the number one thing that we've talked about before with hurricane season during El Nino is that there's more wind shear present during El Nino season. So with wind shear that sometimes pretty much breaks up these low pressure systems and turns them into tropical depressions, they don't quite, properly get going. I think we're already seeing that right now too, and I'll show you guys here in a little bit. Invest 91 is actually moving north right now as we speak, affecting Houston. Really the areas that we have to watch out right now are going to be the outer coast of Texas and going into Beaumont, Texas as well, and heading towards Louisiana, as heavy rain is already moving across the coast in the Gulf. But just some more acknowledgement that we are having catastrophic flooding. Planting season is basically being delayed, calling it historically delayed planting season. Today is June 4th. For my understanding, we have until June 8th to get the corn in the fields. June 8th. We have 4 days. And right now, I don't see how some of these areas are going to be dry enough to get corn in the ground. I could be wrong. And I'll show you the GFS here in a little bit. We'll talk more about what kind of moisture we can expect in the coming days. So, but still lots more to go over. Guys, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.